Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
Another round of oil price rollback takes effect today, bringing diesel prices down by nearly 25 pesos per liter.
The Sandigan Bayan resumes the bail hearing in the malversation case involving former Senator Bong Revilla and other co-accused.
The Department of Education sets June 8 as the start of classes with school year 2026 to 2027 to run under a new 3-term calendar.
Poor air quality continued to be recorded in parts of Metro Manila on Tuesday morning, linked to the ongoing fire at the Navota Sanitary Landfill.
First in the news, the bail hearing of former Senator Bong Revilla resumes at the Sandigan Bayan, with proceedings expected to focus on witnesses and developments in the case. Now, for the latest, we go live to mobile journalist Arles de los Santos. Arles, give us an update.
Angela at Diego, magandang umaga. Nandito pa rin tayo at nagko-cover ng bail hearing sa Sandigan Bayan para nga sa malversation case ni dating Senador Bong Revilla. Dito nga, Angela at Diego, ay lumulutang ang pangalan ni dating DPWH Undersecretary Maria Catalina Cabral, kung saan nga ito daw, yung opisina daw nito mismo, yung nag-utos na ipasok yung subject project ng malversation case ng dating Senador na si Revilla at ng mga akusado nito. Kaugnayan ng umano'y Ghost Flood Control Project na napatagpuan na hindi natagpuan nga sa Pandibulacan na nagkakahalaga ng 92.8 million pesos. Kasama sa humarap dito bilang testigo ngayong araw ang DPWH Division Chief of Planning Services na si Engineer Peter Paul Cortez, at kasama nga nabitbit niya ang original at certified true copy ng dokumento na nakalagay nga umano ang pangalan ni Revilla pero wala itong pirmado. Ipinesenta niya ito dito sa 3rd Division ng Sandigan Bayan.
Arles, ano pa may expect natin today, no? Kasi ang alam natin, kailan ba dapat talaga ang decision nito lalabas? At least more or less, alam natin yung flow ng kaso niya.
Diego, inaasahan natin na sa una o ikalawang linggo ng Mayo ay maglalabas na nga ng desisyon ang Sandigan Bayan 3rd Division para sa malversation case ni dating Senador Bong Revilla kung papayagan nga ba ito na makalaya o hindi. Pero kabukod dyan, itong hearing ay magtatagal hanggang ngayong linggo na lamang. April 24, yung hiling bail hearing kung saan actually tomorrow dapat natin inaasahan si dating DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo, pero na-confirm yan kanina na sa Huwebes daw ito haharap dito, at sa 10 araw na itinagal nga ng bail hearing ng dating senador at ng mga kapwa-akusado nito, inaasahan na mapagdedesisyonan ito agad sa lalong madaling panahon, kung saan binigyan din naman ng korte na hindi nila papayagan ang anumang delaying tactics ng magkabilang panig.
Arles, have you spoken to yung defense team ni the former senator, with how positive they are na may chance magkaroon ng bail despite of it being a non-bailable case against the former senator?
Diego, despite it being a non-bailable case, pwede pa rin sila mag-hain ng petisyon para pansamantalang makalaya si Revilla, kung saan magpapatuloy naman yung pagdinig sa kanyang kaso kung mapayagan man na pansamantalang nga siyang makalabas ng kulungan. Nitong mga nakaraang araw, actually, nakausap natin si Attorney Balisi na kasama sa counsel ng dating senador. Sinabi niya na confident sila na talagang walang koneksyon o malabo yung pagpatungan nila o pagdikit sa pangalan ni dating Senador Bong Revilla dito sa malversation case at sa umano'y Ghost Flood Control Project ng pamahalaan doon sa Pandibulacan. Kaya mataas daw ang kanilang moral. Tinanungan natin noon kung ilang percent sila confident. Ang tanong ni Attorney Balisi, ilan daw bang gusto niya ang gusto natin na sabihin niya 100% or 1,000%? They are definitely confident nga na malabo ay talaga yung pag-connect nga dito kay dating Senador Bong Revilla. Na ngayon, actually Angela at Diego ay wala rito si dating Senador Bong Revilla dahil kahapon sa pagdinig na-excuse ito ng korte matapos magkaroon umano ng migraine, at ngayon wala siya pagdating dito kanina sa coaster mula sa Quezon City Jail.
Well, Arles, can you take us through also dun sa naging pahayag ni Henry Alcantara, no? Kasi nag-testify siya dyan sa bail hearing na yan. At tungkol dun sa usapin na meron daw 30% commitment na natanggap itong si former Senator Bong Revilla mula doon sa 92.8 million na project dyan sa Bulacan. Kung meron bang direct na, kumbaga, impormasyon, no, na nakita or transaksyon si Henry Alcantara?
Angela, sa pagtutok natin sa kabuuan ng bail hearing ng dating senador kung saan si Henry Alcantara, ang dating DPWH District Engineer ang humarap, no, tila naging hamon nga sa prosekusyon na patunayan yung koneksyon ni Revilla dito sa kaso na ito. No? Dahil ayon kay Alcantara ay iniutos lamang ni dating DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo na ipasok nga yung proyekto, ilako yung proyekto at kung saan nga ito pwedeng ilagay dahil nila ay kailangan nga daw no, ng parang pondo ng dating senador. No? Ayon kay Alcantara, ay nung prinoseso nila yung proyekto at ginawa nga no, supposedly at na-release yung funds, wala raw itong transaksyon mismo si Alcantara kay dating Senador Bong Revilla at si dating Yusek Bernardo lamang daw yung kanyang direktang kausap. No? At kaya yan yung dahilan kung bakit tinanong ng mga husgado dito sa 3rd Division ng Sandigan Bayan kung kaya nga bang kumpirmahin talaga ni Alcantara na naibigay sa dating senador yung pera. No? Pero ayon kay Alcantara, hindi niya raw ito makukumpirma, walang kahit anong patunay, pero in a way, medyo naging funny yung tanong sa kanya ng mga husgado na nabukulan na siya ni Bernardo dahil hindi raw sigurado kung mapupunta ba talaga kay Revilla yung pera. At kabukod dyan, Angela at Diego, lumalabas kasi na itong proyekto sa Pandibulacan ay na-award sa Sims Construction kung saan itong Sims Construction ay ipinahiram umano yung lisensya kay Bryce Hernandez at hindi niya rin alam kung yung pera talaga na yon ay yung proyekto talaga yon ay nagawa. No? So parang double whammy na lumalabas. Under his watch, may nangyari na ghost flood control project sa pamumuno ni Alcantara at yung pera na supposedly para kay dating Senador Bong Revilla ay hindi rin makumpirma kung umabot nga talaga sa dating senador.
So kumbaga parang wala siyang personal knowledge doon sa transaction dahil inutos lang sa kanya supposedly ni dating Yusek Bernardo.
Yun ang gusto ko nga itanong, Arles, no? Kasi ang major witness nitong kaso against former Senator Revilla is Henry Alcantara. Is there any other witness that can connect former Senator Revilla to all these shenanigans? Or nakasentro lang ang prosecution sa statement sila Hernandez at Alcantara?
Actually, Diego, ang pinaka-inaabangan natin ngayong linggo ay yung pagharap ni dating DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo. Dahil sa kanyang pagharap doon sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing, no, sinabi niya mismo na merong mga mambabatas at mga senador na mismong nakausap niya. No? At ito mismo, si Bernardo ang nagsabi na dineliver niya mismo sa bahay ng dating senador yung umano'y pera nga, no, or yung commitment para sa proyekto na ito. No? Actually, in total ay nasa 74 million pesos lamang yung ilabas, no? Supposedly 76 million just to get into the numbers, no?
Yeah.
So 92.8 million yung kabuuan ng project cost, no? Dahil 95% itong completed, ang nalabas na budget ay 76 million. Ngayon, nailabas yung 76 million pesos. Ang nangyari, merong 2 to 3% na royalty fee, yung Sims Construction, napunta yung nasa 2 milyon humigit kumulang kay Sally Santos. And then yung 74 million pesos daw ay mismong i-deliver ng Sims Construction kay Bryce Hernandez. Actually, may kasama pa yan na 244 million pesos na surprisingly ay i-deliver sa pamamagitan ng pagsisilid sa mga ito sa mga karton ng toyo at mga chichirya.
Ay, lastly lang before we let you go, no? So refresher lang kasi ang dami na nangyari sa kaso na ito.
Madami na talaga.
Arles.
Actually, salabat na talaga.
Oo, pero yung kay Yusek Bernardo, no? Para klaro lang at maalala natin, siya ang may direct knowledge with regards to humingi ng pera or tumanggap ng pera si former Senator Revilla.
Yes, yan yung sinabi mismo ni dating DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo. Siya mismo yung may direkta na komunikasyon, kaya inaasahan nga natin na baka makapagpapakita rin siya ng iba pang mga ebidensya gaya na lamang ng kanilang message exchange, no? At yung mga larawan na nagpunta siya mismo doon sa bahay ng dating senador sa Cavite.
All right, thank you for that. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting live.
President Bongbong Marcos said the government is working to bring former lawmaker Zaldico back to the Philippines, where he will face charges and be held accountable before the Filipino people. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza reports.
President Marcos himself is certain fugitive ex-lawmaker Zaldico will soon be brought home and will answer for his alleged involvement in the flood control scandal. This is the third time Marcos gave an update on Ko, who is said to have been, quote, arrested in the Czech Republic on travel document-related issues. The president insists Ko is currently detained in a European country and that he has instructed the Department of Foreign Affairs and other agencies to work at bringing him home as soon as possible. A high-level coordination team, he said, will be sent for this mission.
Ang ganitong mga proseso ay may sinusunod na mga legal na hakbang sa pagitan ng mga bansa. Kaya't nangangailangan na sapat na panahon upang maisagawa ng tama. We will bring Zaldico home and we will do so in accordance with the law. He will answer to the Filipino people.
So far, though, there has been no proof of Zaldico in custody in Prague. And in the absence of any visual proof, there are those who continue to cast doubt on the information that Marcos has given. One of whom is former Duterte presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Lahat ng sinabi ng Presidente Marcos Jr. aka bangag tungkol kay Zaldico ay fake news. Kumpirmado po, hindi siya naaresto. Kumpirmado po, hindi nakadetena si Zaldi. Kumpirmado po, ligtas si Zaldico.
International law expert attorney Ralph Sarmiento says if Ko was indeed arrested for a border immigration issue, his case will likely be under the jurisdiction of the Czech Republic's Justice Department. As such, the Philippine government must act fast to ensure Ko's deportation.
I think yung diplomatic negotiation lang talaga, yung pinaka-fastest and most effective na route or remedy na pwedeng i-take ng Philippine government.
Sarmiento says that aside from a red notice from the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol, the Philippines may also invoke the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, or UNAC. Both the Philippines and the Czech Republic are members. Under the UNAC, member states are required to assist one another in the capture of persons wanted for corruption cases. Zaldico is currently facing graft and malversation raps. There could be one problem if this intervention is sought against Ko, though.
So kung mag-file sa ng asylum, yun, it will again further complicate the matter. Pero kung makakauna yung diplomatic negotiation, and then fruitful yung diplomatic negotiation na hindi pa naka-move forward if ever na magplano siya ng application for asylum.
Whatever Zaldico's status is, government efforts continue to bring him back to the Philippines. Kapatid Mobile Journal Julie Baiza, We're One News.
Another oil price rollback takes effect today, Tuesday, April 21. Sea oil for one is rolling back prices, with gasoline down by 3 pesos and 41 centavos per liter. Diesel lower by 24 pesos and 94 centavos, and kerosene down by 2 pesos per liter. Meanwhile, Marikina 2nd District Representative Miro Kimbo is pushing the proposed Kalinga bill as an emergency response measure for sectors hit by rising fuel prices. In an interview with 1PHS Sa Totoo Lang, Kimbo said the government must retain the ability to respond to oil price shocks but without directly dictating fuel prices.
We recognize, parati ko sinasabi, people keep asking, is that are we better off in a regulated or in a deregulated oil industry? And I will always be insistent in saying that we are better off today than when we were highly regulated. So, step backward yan kapag babalik tayo doon. Pero for a highly deregulated industry like what's happening today, kailangan may nare-retain pa rin tayong mga powers on the part of government, particularly pagdating sa oil price shocks na nangyayari. So, ang presumption kasi parati ng isang deregulated environment is, ibig sabihin deregulated, hindi nakikialam ang gobyerno, laissez-faire talaga. Ang presumption dyan, basic, is that for it to work, there has to be an existing real competition. So nagagawa lang natin yan kapag mayroong data or may access ang gobyerno sa lahat ng data ng ating mga oil companies, which right now, hirap na hirap sila makakuha. Pag-aaralan talaga natin oil deregulation law, in terms of the ability of ng government to be able to determine how they price their products. Right now, may mga mekanismo ang DOE na imbis na nakakatulong, nakaka-promote pa ng collusion ng ating mga oil companies. Ano yun? So, meron silang every Tuesday na period of adjustment na ginagawa nila every Tuesday by 10 in the morning. Pinagsasubmit nila lahat ng oil companies based on a fixed formula na ito ang kanilang mga magiging presyo lang based on a 2-week average, last week average. Ganyan pong nangyayari. Na tingin namin ay counterproductive because parang paano magko-compete kung ikaw mismo nagsasabi kung magkano magiging presyo nila. Diba? So, nagsasabay-sabay sila ng pagtaas ng kanilang presyo. Hindi nagkakaroon ng real competition. Eh, nung gamit ng deregulated environment, kung gobyerno mismo ang nagpre-prescribe ng kung kailan sila magdi-declare ng kanilang mga presyo. So, nagsusunuran lang sila. At wala talagang pagkalugi. So, kung titingnan ho ninyo, yung current formula that they are allowed to have is, it is the average of the they call it a delta, or kung saan nagtatagpo ang average price 2 weeks ago and then last week. Yan ang magiging presyo nila may di-declare for the following Tuesday. Okay. So sa akin, mali yun kasi sa LPG, monthly ang kanila. So sa LPG, ang nangyayari is, kung biglang bumaba ang presyo after nag-declare sila kung magkano sila for the month, ikinalulugi nila yun kasi sana pwede silang nag-profit doon. Or pag nagtataas, hindi rin sila makataas. Pero binabawi na lang nila yan over the next month. In short, may risk sharing, kumbaga may risk ang negosyante, hindi sa parating assured with the current system.
Meanwhile, the transport strike of Manibela continues today with possible disruptions for commuters as the protest drags on. For the latest, we go live to our mobile journalist, Ray Vicente. Ray, saan ka ngayon?
Yes, Angela Diego, kasalukuyan nga nandito tayo sa loob ng jeep kasama ang mga tsuper ng grupong Manibela. At sa kasalukuyan, ipapunta nga tayo sa Tagtahan, saan nga gaganapin yung pangalawang event nila para sa tigil pasada nila ngayong araw. Pero kanina, Angela Diego, nandito tayo sa kahabaan ng Commonwealth Avenue dahil nga doon nga isinagawa yung unang araw ng 3-day transport strike nila kanina kung saan nga kahit nga raw nagkaroon muli ng rollback ngayong araw, ang panawagan pa rin nila sana raw mapababa. Kung hindi mapababa, talagang bumalik daw sa dati ang presyo ng langis at syempre masuspende daw talaga yung excise, pati VAT tax at maging ibasura rin talaga yung oil deregulation law. At isa kasalukuyan di tayo sa mesa, medyo malapit na tayo sa Nagtahan. Pero interviewin lang natin saglit, Angela Diego, yung Manibela chairman at si Sir Mar. Sir Mar, magandang umaga po.
Magandang umaga po, Mama Angela and Sir Diego.
Sir Mar, tanong lang po natin kasi yung grupong pistol, kahapon po, naglabas na lang ng peso na fair hike. So,
Opo.
Request.
Pero ang grupong Manibela po ba, ano po ba ang plano sa fair hike?
Sa ngayon po ay wala tayong pinapile na petition para sa fair increase. Kasi nga yung piso na inaprubahan noong Marso ay binawi pa ng ating Pangulo. Kaya walang pag-asa na itong mga fair increase na ihahain natin ay maaprubahan. Ang sa atin lang, respeto na lang ito sa ating mga kasamahan na nag-file ng petition para sa fair increase.
Ano na ba na
At least sana ang increase ay yung realistic na kaya talaga na papakinggan ng ating pamahalaan yung 5 pesos man lamang. Malaking bagay na ito para mabawi natin yung ating mga nalugi noong mga nakaraang pagtataas pa. At hanggang ngayon ay mataas pa rin naman.
Ray,
Yes po,
pwede ba kami magtanong kay
Chairman.
Oo.
Opo.
Mar, ano po, hanggang kailan po natin gagawin itong tigil pasada?
Hanggang po mapakinggan ng gobyerno yung ating panawagan na ma-rollback itong presyo ng mga produktong petrolyo sa tamang presyo po nito na alam natin dahil alam natin ang galaw ng presyo sa merkado malayong malayo po itong rollback na ito kung ang pagbabasihan ay ang presyo po sa pandaigdigang merkado na naglalaro po ngayon sa assume na lang natin na $90 per barrel. At kung kukwentahin natin simula nung nagkaroon ng giyera na $72 per barrel, ang dapat dahil $18 po ang binawas nito ay dapat nasa 75 pesos na po ang pagbaba ngayong araw. Pero tinitignan po natin na mas malaki pa yung replenishment cost na kinuha sa atin ng unang buwan. Kaya po dapat lamang na maibaba na ito sa mas malaki pang pagtapyas sa presyo ng petrolyo. Patulad ng panawagan natin na dapat 55 pesos na ang presyo nito.
Mark, kung hindi kung hindi bigyan yung hiling nyo na magtaas ng 5 pesos pa hiningin, 5?
5 pesos po na per increase. Ang hinihingi po natin ng coalition para nang sa ganon, ito po yung malaking bagay na makakabuhay po ng pamamasada.
Yun. Kung hindi pagbigyan yan, Mar, pero ang excise tax sa diesel kasi pinag-aaralan at baka pag-aaralan ng ilang senador na isuspend, okay na ba sa inyo yan o tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang laban?
Malaking bagay din po ang pagtanggal o pag-suspend ng value-added tax, combined ng excise tax. Makakabawi-bawi na rin kami kahit papano, kahit wala na pong fair increase. So alin man po doon sa dalawa, ang pagtanggal ng mga buwis or ang pagbibigay ng fair increase, kahit alin po doon sa dalawa ay welcome po sa atin.
Basta lumaki lang ang take-home pay ng isang driver natin, no?
Opo, basta importante po ay madagdagan yung take-home pay natin at madagdagan po yung kita at mas makakabuhay na po ng pamilya. Kasi yung kinikita po ngayon, hindi po talaga nakakabuhay ng pamilya. Pahirap at pagod lamang ang nakukuha ng super.
Yan ang gusto ko itanong lang Mar, para may yung mga viewers natin makita nila yung hirap na dinadaan ng isang super natin. Ano yung take-home pay ngayon as of this moment ng isang driver?
Kung dati po noong nakaraang linggo, nasa halos 200 piso. Ngayon po, 250 kada araw, malaki na po kung makakapag-uwi ng 300 pesos ang isang super.
Okay.
Kasi may mga gastusin pa po yan sa maghapon.
Sir Mark, kanina po kasi tinitignan ko, nung nagsimula po na nagkaroon ng Middle East conflict po, nagtaas na yung diesel ng 90 pesos per liter at ang gasolina 36 per liter. And overall, ang ibinaba naman po sa atin dito ay 50 pesos per liter at ang gasolina 10 pesos per liter. Ngayon, ang sinasabi po kasi ng DOE, yesterday, formal po na sila na po ang magtatakda ng presyo. No? Kung magkano ba i-rollback, magkano ang itataas ng gasolina, depende pa rin sa market. No? Kayo po ba ay pabor doon? Kasi nabigyan po sila ng ganitong pagkakataon o otoridad dahil nasa state of national energy emergency situation tayo.
Opo, Ma'am Angela, kung naisakatuparan po yung pagbibigay ng state of energy emergency, matagal na po sanang naibsan ng taong bayan yung pagdurusa. Pinatagal pa nila ito ng pinatagal, pinag-isipan pa ng pinag-isipan, na lalo pong nagpabigat sa sitwasyon ng mga tsuper at ng mamamayang Pilipino, ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino. Kayang-kaya naman pala nila, bakit hindi pa ito minadali? Bakit hinayaan pa na malimas o masimot yung katiting nakita ng mga ordinaryong jeepney driver?
Well, meron pong pag-aaral ang Ibon Foundation na sinasabi po nila kumita yung mga oil companies ngayong nasa energy crisis tayo ng mahigit 40 plus billion. So that's around 1.5 billion every day. Kada araw, yan po yung sinasabi nila. At tinitignan po, baka daw po merong profiteering na mangyayari dito. Kayo po ba ay naniniwala na magagampanan po ng gobyerno yung kanilang kumbaga role, obligasyon na talaga pong maparusahan kung sino man po sa mga oil companies, if ever, yung kumikita sa ganitong sitwasyon?
Alam niyo, Ma'am Angela, Sir Diego, kapag taya natin ang oil companies sa loob ng 45 days, ang kinita ng mga oil companies sa profiteering or windfall profit ang kinita po nila ay hindi bababa sa 130 billion pesos. Yung 40 billion pesos po ay kita ito ng gobyerno dito sa windfall profit sa pamamagitan ng pagkolekta ng excise tax at value-added tax. So magkaiba po yun, pero sa magkaparehong bilang ng araw ay pareho pong kumita ang ating gobyerno at ang mga oil company.
Alright. Sige po, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras sa Marvel Buena. Okay.
Maraming salamat po.
Oo. Chairman ng Manibela. And of course, maraming salamat din sa ating mobile journalist na si Ray Vicente.
Let's now check the situation at our gasoline stations. We have mobile journalist Francis Rivera on the ground. Francis, kanina nag-rollback. Kamusta naman ang presyo? Sumusunod ba ang mga gasoline stations?
Good morning, Angela, and good morning, Checo. Actually, nandito tayo sa isang gasoline station kung saan kabilang ito sa mga nag-o-offer ng 10 pesos fuel subsidy para doon sa ating mga kapatid na jeepney driver at driver ng UP Express. Katunayan dyan, Diego, naabutan pa natin nagpalit ng presyo. So kanina nasa 120 plus yung presyo ng diesel, ngayon nasa 110 pesos na lang. At yung presyo naman nitong gasoline ay nasa 83 pesos per liter. So tumat sila sa ng presyo ng rollback ngayong araw na ito. At kanina wala pa tayong nakikitang mga nafe-fail or yung mga sumasablay, kumbaga, na nag-avail nitong 10 pesos fuel subsidy dun sa mga tsuper, ano? At ang kailangan lang kasi nila ipakita yung kanilang plate number o yung kanilang plaka doon sa system na meron itong mga staff ng gasoline na to, no? At itatype ka nila at kung pasok at qualified sila na makatanggap, automatikong binibigay agad yan para doon or kinakaltas na mismo doon sa kinakarga nilang crudo, no? At ilan nga sa mga nakausap natin, ano, okay na raw, no, kahit pa paano okay na raw na merong ganitong diskwento, pero talagang halos hindi raw maramdaman, no, kahit 10 pesos ito. At yung 5,000 nakuha daw nila hindi nga raw tumagal ng ilang araw. Kaya ang panawagan nila kahit suntok sa buwan, sana bumalik yung presyo ng diesel sa 50 pesos to 55 pesos per liter. Angelo, Diego.
Alright, maraming salamat sa iyong oras sa mobile journalist Francis Rivera. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News.
Iran has accused the United States of breaching a ceasefire after it seized an Iranian vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts are ongoing, with Pakistan preparing to host a second round of talks between Iran and the U.S. Here's the report.
Iran has condemned the United States' seizure of an Iranian vessel near the Strait of Hormuz, calling it a clear violation of international law in the agreed ceasefire.
Vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
Iran's Joint Military Command vowed to respond, further straining the fragile truce just days before it is set to expire. Tehran also warned that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed as long as the United States maintain a naval blockade on Iran. Meanwhile, Pakistani authorities are preparing to host a second round of talks between Iran and the United States, though uncertainty remains over whether the negotiations will push through. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said Tehran has no confirmed plans yet to attend, but did not rule out participation in future talks. The White House said Vice President J.D. Vance, who led the first round of face-to-face talks last weekend, will head the U.S. delegation to Pakistan, along with envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. The fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran is set to expire on Wednesday.
Yan. Mag-expire na sa Wednesday kasi yung 2-week ceasefire ng Iran and of course US and Israel.
We're not privy kasi to all the conditions set by both sides, but yung pinaka-main provisions kasi daw, yung hinihingi ng US, yung uranium enrichment, no, bawas-bawasan, hindi maibigay ng Iran. In the first place, they're denying it. So, hindi na meet yung full conditions ng US. Sa Iran naman, they had certain conditions also about the blockade. Ayaw naman bitawan ng US yung blockade nila sa vessels ng Iran. It's because we will continue the blockade if you continue to hold the Strait of Hormuz closed. So, wala nagbabudge. So, ang Pakistan will be a good, we were talking to a lot of people yesterday also, no, na will be a good mediator for this because supposedly, neutral ang Pakistan with all of this, supposedly.
Pero yun nga, di ba, tinanong natin din kay Professor Clarita Carlos before na, what does this message send us na ngayon, in times like this, yung Pakistan na yung gumigit na para nagmi-mediate dito sa dalawang panig na ito. Kumbaga parang natatanggal na yung traditional na merong Western power na nagmi-mediate din, 'di ba? So, well, sabi naman ni Professor Clarita Carlos, you have to remember also ang Pakistan is 'di ba, sa side daw ng China. Yun ang sinasabi niya.
Long time China ally yan, silently. Pero alam mo, if you look at the playbook of mabilis lang before I move on, the playbook of the US, it's very interesting. I was reading how they dealt with other wars na ayaw nila sakupin yung territorial area. Iran, what they're doing kasi daw, sabi ng isang analyst, military analyst, is they're not really intent on capturing a geographical land or physical land ng Iran. What they're trying to do is they're buying time by supposedly creating a blockade, attacking Iran. Ang nangyayari sa Iran, yung mga income nila or economy nila naka-halt. Because walang perang pumapasok at lumalabas masyado. And they're spending a lot on military just to defend themselves against the US. Nangyayari, their economy is bleeding dry. So pag natapos na daw lahat ito, ang mangyayari sa Iran, yung supposedly money that they have to keep their economy going, and plus yung uranium enrichment nila for nuclear weapons, mababawasan na. So
actually,
it's another tactic daw.
Well, actually, yun nga, isa sa mga, if I'm not mistaken, 10-point agenda ng Iran din na kumbaga, anong sinasabi nila, na i-lift yung economic sanctions sa kanila. Kasama yun sa pinag-uusapan. But we'll see what's going to happen. Hopefully, maging mas maayos yung, yung usapin tungkol dyan.
Yeah.
Alright, in other news, the Department of Education has set June 8 as the start of classes for school year 2026 to 2027, with the school year ending April 8 under a new 3-term calendar. DepEd says the 201-day school year is part of reforms aimed at improving lesson pacing, addressing learning gaps, and giving more structure for assessments and recovery programs. The new calendar will be implemented nationwide in public schools, while private schools may adopt the same system subject to DepEd rules.
Now let's talk more about this with PBED Executive Director Hannibal Camua. Good morning, Hannibal. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning, Sir Angela and Mama Angela.
Long time.
Good morning po.
Ito, Hannibal, itong 3 terms calendar school year, starting itong school year, approaching school year na, are we prepared for this move?
Well, that's also a question that I am actually asking right now, no? Because this move by the DepEd actually is one big reform. I believe it's a big reform. And as always with reforms like this, and my stand on this is really this could have been pilot tested first, or let's say there should have been, let's say, a case example of a pilot testing and what are the results of the pilot test. I'm coming in from a perspective of, let's say, for example, reforms like, for example, the enhanced senior high school program, which was pilot tested in the previous school year before it would be mass implemented this incoming school year. So it could have been better if we had, let's say, results of an initial implementation or a pilot implementation before a blanket, let's say, implementation of a 3-term school calendar as mandated by DepEd.
Well, kasi looking at the historical data, no, may mga quarters, may midterms, of course, yung 3-term parang this is not the first, but it's very rarely that I hear a school in the past na may 3 terms. Ano ang mga pros and cons of a mid-term, 2 terms and a 3-term? Kasi there has to be pros and cons.
Well, I just like to zero in, let's say, on the side of, let's say, for example, our existing school calendar and the lesson plans of our teachers, at the point of view of the teachers and the implementers, I would always go back to that. Their lesson plans are actually currently designed on 4 quarters.
Yes, that's right.
So their assessment, the assessments, their tests, their lesson planning is based on 4 quarters. And I don't know if there was enough runway given by the Department of Education for their teachers and also capacity building or training them to, let's say, convert that lesson plan, their current lesson plan, their current assessment plans from a 4-quarter design now into a 3-term school year.
That's right.
Because that's, number one, that's a big adjustment. I would believe that's already a big adjustment. Lesson planning and then assessment design. Second is also on, particularly because this mandate from the DepEd actually says that it's mandatory to public schools, but also my interpretation is optional for private schools. Now, it affects learner mobility. And it's quite unclear how are they going to treat the learner mobility, for example, from a public school in the middle of a school year, may bata or may learner tayong magta-transfer into a private school, implementing not a 3-term school calendar, but still sticking to a 4-quarter school calendar. Now, what would be the treatment for, let's say, for example, equivalencies of, let's say, assessments? How are they going to put in credits now? Because it's a different thing coming from a 3-term school calendar, and now, at the middle of a school year, a learner transfers to a school with a still adopting a 4-quarter school calendar. So, on top of mind, yun yung nasa isip ko na para how are we going to, how is DepEd going to manage all this intricacies and complexities. But by the end of the day, Sir Angelo and Ma'am Angela, it's an adjustment into a calendar. It's an adjustment to the calendar, and DepEd says it will protect instructional time, which is good. The intention is good. Again, it comes down to execution. As to reforms like this, it comes down to executions. And at the point of the implementers, our teachers at the school level, how prepared are they to implement this? And how has the central office, the DepEd central office, prepared and trained the teachers and the implementers to do this shift in the school calendar? Also, by the point, ang ano natin is if this reform would actually mean that there's more instructional time, does that actually translate to actual improvement
Yun nga
in
eh, I
learning
was gonna ask
outcomes?
that eh. Oo.
Yes.
Tama, Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hindi, kasi you have a very good points there eh. Ang dami mo nga sinabi dyan na talagang dapat isa-isahin muna ng DepEd before implementing this. But yun nga, no, for context lang, kasi 3 terms, sabi nila, opening block yung mangyayari will be orientation, class organization, instructional period yung second, and then third is the end of term activities, yung mga assessment, etc. So the question here nga po, will this address yung ating reading, comprehension problem? Magkakaroon din ba tayo ng kumbaga solusyon doon sa pagiging behind natin dito sa PISA, yung iba pang mga pag-aaral na ginagawa? Although sabi nila, this will help daw the mga non-teaching personnel, no? Pagdating doon sa mga documentation, etc. Your thoughts on that?
Well, as what I've said, because there was no pilot of this, we don't have experience of, let's say, implementing this at mass, no? So we don't have, let's say, evidences to cite in the first place. So will that, for example, as in my point earlier, increase, because it now it protects instructional time and there's prolonged, let's say, learner contact. Mas mahaba na yung instructional time and teaching time ng mga teachers to the learners. But that, again, question still remains if it translates to actual improvements in learning outcomes. Because studies there, actually, nag-vary eh. Merong prolonged instructional time actually will lead to more improvements in learning outcomes. Pero
Tama.
meron din nagsasabi na it doesn't necessarily mean na kung if you stay in school, you learn. Hindi eh. So there's varied evidences surrounding that. And for me, as what I said earlier, this could have been better. It could have given us more evidence to sit on. It would have given us more experience and lessons to contemplate on and give more time for our implementers to adjust if there was, let's say, a pilot
That's
testing
right.
of this kind of reform.
Well, it's interesting. Sorry,
Go ahead.
doon kasi sinabi niya, no, it's interesting you're talking about given more time, no, na which we lack. Magkakaroon ba tayo dito ng compatibility issues between schools with regards to private to public or public to private? Kasi ngayon pa lang, if the plenty students who are shifting mid-year schools, let's say gustong isa from a private school, gusto mag-Philippine Science, Quezon City Science, or vice versa, nagkakaroon ng compatibility issues with regards to subjects, hindi nagbabangga. Minsan nag-overload, nag-underload, na-take na ba tong subject. Ngayon, we're going to have this transition. Ano mangyayari dito?
I have to be honest, Sir Angelo, no, I haven't seen the actual, let's say, memorandum that on the implementation and the guidelines for this shift into a 3-term school calendar. So your points are actually also my questions, as what I raised earlier, na para it raises certain compatibility issues, especially for those schools that will not adopt or will not transition yet to the 3-term school year, particularly the private schools, because as what the release of DepEd said, it's optional for private schools. So that in itself leaves that gap for learner mobility. What happens? What I said earlier. What happens to learners who in the middle of the school year would transfer schools and hindi magkapareho yung school calendar na ng original school niya or yung school na pinanggalingan niya sa pupuntahan niya eskwelahan.
Well, Sir Bal, to your point kanina na dapat i-pilot testing lang muna ito sa ilang lugar or sa ilang paaralan, may naisip po ba kayo kung saan po pwede at bakit doon? And I was wondering kasi kung halimbawa, let's say, tama po kayo, baka mamaya hindi pala okay yung sistema na yun. Paano naman yung mga estudyante na nag-test na ganun? I mean, tinest for that system.
So there are, and basically, ito rin yung nakikita nating comments ng ibang grupo, no? Na para, especially that there are groups who would say na parang ang nangyayari ngayon is we put in reforms na parang mabilisan and then yung mga reforma na ginagawa natin, big reforms are actually being implemented, no? So, as what I've said, katulad lang din po yan at babalik ako sa example ko po kanina. I will go back to my example of how a big reform like the Enhanced Senior High School Program has been pilot tested in more than 700 or 800 schools, if I'm not mistaken. And there was that DepEd memorandum na merong participation to that pilot testing was actually merong voluntary. Kung ang eskwelahan ay gusto nila mag-participate in the pilot testing of the Enhanced Senior High School Program, they can do so. So I think from my end, as what I've said earlier, if we can, and if DepEd did a pilot testing of the Enhanced Senior High School, considering that it's a reform that big, the same could have been done for the shift, or in this case, yung 3-term na school year. But at the end of the day, for me, I trust that DepEd has done and has carefully studied this policy shift. Kami naman sa end namin sa Philippine Business for Education, and also because as always, our lookout is on let's say the kung ano yan will this policy shift, will this reform actually lead to, let's say, our learners being more learning, mas natututo ba yung ating mga learners, mas magiging hireable ba yung ating mga graduates if we do this policy shift. So those are actually our success metrics eventually.
Right. Okay, as always, great insights. Maraming salamat po sa iyong oras, PBED Executive Director Bal Camua.
Thank you so much.
Deepening dispute within the Lopez family is now raising bigger questions about control, governance, and billions in potential exposure. Here's the report.
First Philippine Holdings deferred its annual shareholders meeting, which was scheduled for May 28. The reason? The ongoing legal dispute between members of the Lopez family over control of the group, which has been playing out very publicly for weeks. At the center of that dispute are provisions in two major deals, provisions being referred to as a poison pill. In February this year, a majority of the board of Lopez Inc. voted to remove Federico Lopez, known as Peaky, as president. The shock move was led by his cousin Eugenio Lopez III, known as Gabby. Lopez Inc. is the private family holding company that controls one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines. Peaky obtained a court injunction blocking his removal, so he remains in his seat while the case gets resolved by a Mandaluyong court. In corporate practice, a poison pill is a provision that makes it costly or difficult to remove existing management or ownership. The idea is that whoever tries to force a change will effectively swallow something painful in the process. Now, this dispute centers on two major transactions that First Gen, headed by Peaky, entered into with Enrique Rezon's Prime Infrastructure. In 2025, First Gen sold a 60% stake in its gas-fired power plants to Prime for 50 billion pesos. Separately, First Gen invested 62 billion pesos to acquire a stake in Prime Infrastructure's hydropower projects, two pumped storage facilities being developed in Rizal and Laguna. If Peaky is removed as CEO of First Gen, or if his designated team loses board control, Prime Infrastructure has the right to buy back First Gen stakes at a 25% discount. Taking a closer look now at how much that will cost the Lopezes. On the hydropower projects in Rizal and Laguna, the potential loss is 15.5 billion pesos. On the gas plants in Batangas, an additional 8 billion. So the total exposure is 23.5 billion pesos. This week, it also emerged that BDO's 25 billion peso loan guarantees for the same hydropower deal carry a similar condition, meaning they also want Peaky to stay on. Gabby's faction says the poison pill was not disclosed to the full board or to the stock exchange and constitutes self-dealing. First Gen says the clauses were requested by Rezon himself, and that disclosure rules for listed companies governed the timing of their release. The Philippine Holdings has not announced a new date for the shareholders meeting.
Don't go away because we're not done yet. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on The One News.
Some areas in Metro Manila continued to experience poor air quality on Tuesday morning. Based on PM 2.5 monitoring by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Environmental Management Bureau, Marikina and Valenzuela recorded acutely unhealthy air. Meanwhile, Malabon, Quezon City, and Caloocan registered very unhealthy to unhealthy air quality levels. Fair to good air quality was reported in Mandaluyong, Navotas, San Juan, Makati, Muntinlupa, and Taguig. Authorities traced the poor air conditions to the ongoing fire at the Navotas Sanitary Landfill, which started on April 10.
We are now joined by Engineer Jundi Del Socorro, Chief of the Air Quality Management Section of the Environmental Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Good morning, Miss Angelo and Miss Angela Castro.
All right, engineer, no, baka you can explain to us po para maintindihan namin better ano yung ibig sabihin po ng PM 2.5 and bakit po importante ito sa pag-monitor ng air quality?
Well, PM 2.5 po, ito yung pinaka-fine particles na product of combustion. So, sa pag-monitor natin ng mga particulate matter, meron ng mga fine, medium fine, at saka very fine particles. So, yung pinaka-fine particles po siya, yung pinakamagaan, kung saan ito ay 2 microns pababa. Imagine po, ang diameter ho ng buhok natin is 70 microns. So, almost 30 times smaller po yan. Kaya sa sobrang gaang niya, ay madali ho siyang ma-disperse at nagtatagal ho siya sa itaas. So, nagkakaroon din ho ng problema in terms of visibility pag matagal ho siyang nasususpend sa hangin po.
Para magkaroon po tayo, engineer, ng baseline, no? Pag wala itong Navotas Sanitary Landfill Fire, ano po ang standard air quality natin?
Well, ang standard air quality natin in general po ay nagre-range po tayo sa Metro Manila from fair to good. And on peak traffic times ay maaari po siyang umakyat ng unhealthy for sensitive groups. At ang air pollution po kasi ay nagbabari sa lugar at oras. Like for example, sa urban areas dito sa Metro Manila, ay pagka paakyat na ho ang peak ng traffic, which is mostly 60% po galing sa transport ang pollution natin base sa ating emission inventory, ay tataas ho siya sa mga oras na from 6 to 9. Then medyo bababaho ng konti sa tanghali at akyat uli pag magra-rush hour na ho sa hapon. It may start as early as 4 p.m. po and hanggang matatapos po siya ng most likely 7 to 8 p.m. Yan po yung normal na baseline ho ng isang urban areas kagaya ng Metro Manila.
Gaano po ba kalakas nung impact nitong Navotas Sanitary Landfill Fire doon sa current air quality natin? And ito po, kababasa ko lang po kanina, ang nakalagay po doon sa study po ninyo, fair to good air quality was reported in Mandaluyong and in Navotas, San Juan, Makati. Kasama rin po yung Navotas. Maganda na yung air nila, pero sa kanila nang galing yung fire sa landfill.
Ang gaya na sinabi ko po, ang pollution ay nagbabari from time and place. At marami rin mga meteorological factors kung saan nakaka-apekto. Like for example, ang direksyon ng hangin. Pag meron mainit na sea breeze at papuntang inland, ay most likely affected ang mga karatig na cities ng Metro Manila. So, kung titingnan natin ang ating mapa, so Navotas po, at nasa east side niya, nandiyan na yung Valenzuela, Quezon City, and some parts of Caloocan. So sila ang mga direct na may impact pag ang direksyon ng hangin ay papunta doon. At minsan din, hindi magandang kombinasyon pag nagkaroon ng temperature inversion, kung saan mas mainit mainit masyado ang konkreto. At overnight po, pagdating ng umaga ay mas mainit na sa itaas ang hangin, hindi nadidisperse ang mga pollutants. Ngunit may mga panahon naman na ang direksyon ng hangin ay maaaring pumunta ng norte at maaaring pumunta ng ubando. At like today papunta ng west naman ng hangin, so palabas naman sa Metro Manila base sa ating observation from Pag-asa data and satellite data.
At sa ngayon po ba, kumbaga, ano pa po yung mga parang maaari pong makuha ng mga residente dito sa mga hindi magandang kalidad ng hangin? Mga sakit.
Well, ang pollution po ay marami health risk. So from respiratory sa cardiovascular at kung toxic po ay maaaring may mga neurological health effects po ito. So tayo ay nakipag-ugnayan sa Operation Center ng DOH kung saan iba't ibang ahensya ay nagpupulong-pulong. Like kahapon meron dalawang malaking pagpupulong ang Operation Center ng DOH para ma-address ang mga health impacts at lahat ng mga pangangailangan ng ating mga kasamang government agencies, lalong-lalo ng Bureau of Fire, para lahat ng kailangan nila para mapigil na itong sunog sa landfill sa Navotas.
Bukod po dito sa sunog po sa landfill sa Navotas, ano pa po yung nakikita natin na iba pang contributing factors para po masabi natin yung we have poor air conditions?
Well, on the baseline po, ang isang urban area, ang tatlong major na sources ng pollution. Number one is stationary or the industrial sources. Number two, yung pinakamalaking contributor, which are the transport sector.
Yes.
At number three isang air sources. Ito yung mga sources ng pollution kung saan walang direct discharge from a single point like stock o chimney o tailpipe na sasakyan. So kasama po rito yung mga open burning at itong mga landfill fires. They are considered as air sources.
Kasi ang tanong na marami, okay na ba daw magsuot? Kung gusto ko na rin, meron akong comorbidity, masama ang, or senior ako, will surgical masks work or kailangan ba yung mga N95?
Well, pinapayo po namin kung ano ho yung mas mataas na kalidad ng face mask, mas maganda ho kung N95 na ho. Dahil sa ngayon ho, inobserbahan ho natin ang level ng air quality index ay hindi pa rin ho mabuti sa mga karatig na regions po, cities na Metro Manila. So kung mga comorbidities, kung talagang hindi naman ho importante ang lakad, ay manatili na lang ho sa loob muna ng bahay. At kung talagang importante ay situate na meron ho tayong protection kagaya ng N95 mask.
Go ahead.
Very quickly na lang po, kasi ako po, curious po ako dun sa parang pinaka-standard operating procedure po ninyo sa pag-check ng air quality. Aside po dito sa mga, kunyari, may mga nangyayari na sunog, tapos meron din yung mga, kunyari, mga bagong taon, may paputok, chine-check nyo po yung air quality. Pero standardly, tuwing kailan po kayo nag-check talaga ng air quality?
Ang pag-check natin air quality ay 24 hours a day po for 7 days a week and 365 days a year. So you can visit amb.gov.ph or ngayon ho, mas nilalagay namin ang aming real-time monitoring sa social media, sa Facebook. So like for example, this one you can visit AMB, National Capital Region ho, at nandun ho ay ang aming link sa ating real-time monitors at from time to time ay meron ng mga cautionary statement at pinopost ko ang pinaka-main na air quality levels at nandun na rin ho, yung mga recommendation or precautionary statements para ho sa ating public.
Well, curious lang din ako, mabilisan lang kung meron po bang difference ngayon na nakatigil pasada yung mga majority ng transport sector natin. Meron bang difference sa air quality na dala sila?
Well, tinitingnan ko ho ang level ng air quality natin. Maaring baka maliit lang din ho dahil patuloy hong may unhealthy for sensitive groups at may acutely rin kaming nakikita. Ngunit base sa aming obserbasyon naman ay papunta naman ho ng west o palabas ng inland ang ating hangin ngayon. At siguro hanggang mamaya ho ay ating inobserbahan, baka mas mabuti na ho. At also from the news na nakita namin ay medyo malalaking area na ho ang na-soil cover sa Navotas Landfill.
Ayun. Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Engineer Jundi Del Socorro, Chief of the Air Quality Management Section of the DENR's Environmental Management Bureau. Magandang umaga po.
Salamat po sa inyo and thank you very much for the invitation.
And that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
I'm Angelo Castro III. Kapatid, we are one you.
All sides, all the time.